Hello, my name is Rick Ellis. I am a principal consultant with ROI Healthcare Solutions, and I will be presenting today's webinar, Get Ready for a New Dimension with Improved GL Structure. A little bit about me. I've been consulting for over 20 years with the Infor Loss and Finance product. I got a lot of background with business and analysis, application design support, testing, full implementations, upgrades, solution support, as well as other functions that are part of the Infor offering. I am considered a financial leader or finance leader in our group, subject matter expert, and I am also certified in S3 and CloudSuite financials. A little bit about ROI. We are a trusted IT partner and have been so since 1999. We have clinical financial operation efficiency gains through our ERP, EHR, and R2LS related initiatives. Foundation of industry-centric project management, over 100 plus team members, each team member having at least 10 years of functional and technical experience. Some of our core capabilities include project and change management, advisory services, implementation, business transformation, optimization, application support, and staff augmentation. We are recognized as Inc. 5000 and also recognized by Modern Healthcare as best places to work. We have several class category leadership awards under our belt, including 2018 and 2019 Business Solution Implementation Services Class Leader. We are also CloudSuite specialized with Infor, specifically for health hospitals and health systems and extended care providers. In addition to our Infor offerings, we do ERP and HIS. Advise and optimize, implement, staff support. We work with Infor, Cerner, Epic, Allscripts, Athena Health, Change Healthcare, Electra, NextGen, Nuance, OnBase, PeopleSoft Oracle, Picus, Relay Health, Sunquest, Teletracking, and T-Systems. So today we're going to take a look at getting ready for your move to CSF, or just really getting prepared or getting your systems GL in a good working order. A lot of organizations that we've seen over the last couple of years, even on the S3 world, when they're thinking about moving to CSF, really need to take a look at their internal finance structure, because that is actually what sets the project on the right path. So we're going to look at CloudSuite Readiness. We're going to start with the chart. We'll take a look at a redesign approach. Going to take a look at the 5 commandments, which are ROI's principles to avoiding common pitfalls. We're going to kind of step through some examples or real life example, and then we're going to talk about next steps. So we all know, at least from a finance perspective, that finance is the backbone of any ERP system. Everything kind of revolves around what occurs in finance. Now, I know a lot of our HR friends will beg to differ, but we do all know and give them credit for keeping us in order that true employees must reside in a system before a system can be used. But once those employees reside, all of the system relies on what occurs in finance. So when we're looking at our finance system, we're looking at stuff specifically the global ledger or general ledger if you're still using S3, and also our accounting units, accounts in S3, and our dimensions in CSF. So today when we go into organizations, we hear a lot about some of the finance challenges that may hinder success in CloudSuite. Executives are not able to rely on the data to make financial decisions. Organization has outgrown the structure of its chart of accounts, creating maintenance challenges and workarounds. And this is also true with the accounting units. We found that a lot of organizations have backed themselves in a corner by doing smart numbering which they didn't really think about or was not actually done in a smart manner. And they've kind of pigeonholed themselves, or backed themselves in a corner. Too much time is spent on manual data reconciliation and reporting. Gap updates may not be fully supported by the current system. And again, the numbering system is not scalable enough to support growth. So obviously there's nothing wrong with smart numbering, but it has to be done in a manner that allows you to, allows your organization room to grow. For instance, if you're currently using S3 system and you've narrowed yourself down to only have 2 digits for your departments, and now you have 100 departments, 100 plus departments, you kind of back yourself in a corner and you're going to have to come to a provider or support to get yourself out of that situation. So again, to reiterate, the chart is the heart of finance. We know that. We know that the chart of accounts is the main component to the finance system. Without a good streamlined chart, your organization is going to have issues with just day-to-day operations and also when it comes to reporting. So when we talk about the CloudSuite financials and supply management, they've re-implemented or reinvented the global ledger. So now instead of just an accounting unit accounts, we have what we call now dimensions. And this dimension functionality will expand the things that you can do when it comes to tracking and keeping up with all of your transactions from a finance perspective. What it does is it replaces a lot of what most organizations are using now with attributes. So now we take those attributes and we turn them into dimensions. And again, this facilitates enhanced reporting. So the global ledger really, I kind of tell people to look at it as like a Rubik's Cube, where each one of those cubes is a data element. And the dimension gives us that functionality. Each dimension is supported by a hierarchy, which gives us, again, the flexibility to create transactions that go into these dimensions. And then the end result is we can easily access that data in the dimensions for reporting. So looking at a financial deployment roadmap. So we're talking about, again, kind of jumping right into what happens when we come in and start talking to your organization about how we get from current state to future state. And right now we're kind of focusing on the prep work. So a lot of the emphasis goes into looking at quality and cost reduction, things like master data cleanup, defining the new general ledger, mapping the new ledger to the old ledger, and then over to innovation and automation, process standardization, policy standardization where appropriate, and then extend to the user community, your RICE elements, your reports, your interfaces, your customizations, and your extensions. We want to look at all of those items. And how does it benefit to the organization? Well, it gives you evaluation and standardization. We want to look at making things as simple as possible and as standard as possible across the board. So we're really driving to a finance continuous accounting maturity model. If you think about, or if you've been using the Lawson now Infor software for a long time, we could think about the evolution of what's going on with the software. So you go from looking at the bottom, from legacy processes up through the Lawson to modernized record to report. And then once we got to Infor version 10, we started getting to this continuous processing frame of mind. And as we evolve up to CSF, we start talking about strategic accounting and now continuous accounting. So if we think about legacy processes, what does that mean? Well, of course, this means it's always been done this way. I mean, we look at things that never change. We've always done it this way. Why do we do it this way? Again, we've always done it this way. Is that the best way? Not necessarily. Is it best practice? Probably not. But that's our responsibility to walk you through those scenarios and make the best recommendation. So modernize record to report, purpose-built technology to automate. So now we're all moving into a web-based, cloud-based where we want to have things automated. We want to automate approvals. We want to automate that as much as possible. We want to automate as much of the system as we can. We want to set up reports to run, set up processes to run. Continuous processing, brand autonomy, and balancing the workload, the linking of automation. What is strategic accounting? Proactively driving financial value. Traditional tasks become a non-event. What about continuous accounting? Maximize automation to produce constant financial data streams. Agile accounting meets cloud. So that's where we want to be. That's where we are today when we talk CSF. So what are 3 steps to a mature GL structure? Number 1, we need to gather a deep understanding of accounts and reporting requirements. So we need to understand, what are our accounts representing? Are they just numbers? And what do those numbers represent? A lot of times we go into organizations and we see where several sets of hands have been on the charts. They're duplicate accounts. So a different number that in the account means the same thing. So when people are actually putting in transactions, they have to choose between really the same account. So then you end up with multiple accounts that mean the same thing, which is cluttering up your chart. The second thing we do is we look at we visualize, design, and deliver a GL with a future in mind. Again, what we're going to look to do is we're going to review the chart. We're going to pare it down where necessary. We're going to merge accounts. We're going to open up some new accounts. CSF does require pretty much the same accounting information that you have in your S3 world, but we want to make sure we have full coverage accounting for what happens with global HR, should you use that, what happens with supply chain, and all of the other functional areas that are feeding into the GL. Also keeping in mind some of your extensions, Cerner, Epic. We want to make sure that we have all bases covered. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the running of the business outside of the chart of accounts. We should not be running your organization with your chart of accounts. So in other words, we shouldn't have a chart account for a department. A department should not be in the chart of accounts. The third thing, educate stakeholders, create master data adherence, and then we got to look at what happens when we're cutting over a new chart. So again, this isn't done in a silo. We want all major stakeholders involved. That means we're not just dealing with finance. We're bringing in supply chain. We're bringing in payroll. We're bringing in global HR. We're bringing in all the parties that need to be involved in our newly designed chart of accounts. So what are the 5 commandments of a chart redesign? Number 1, keep your general ledger general. Again, we don't want a cluttered general ledger. We want a ledger that is streamlined, but it also allows you to report and run your business as you so desire. Number 2, we need to involve our decision makers. We want to make sure that the decision makers, the folks that need to be involved, are involved. Number 3, we want to design with the future in mind. Again, we don't want to back ourselves in a corner. Number 4, use smart numbering as a compass. Again, we all learned that technique in S3 back in our earlier days, those of us who've been doing this for a long time. Well, we still can use smart numbering, but again, we have to think about it in a manner that's going to help us going forward. So again, we're not backing ourselves in a corner. And again, structure your data to justify business decisions. That is our 5th commandment. So let's kind of look at each one of those 5 commandments individually. So number 1, keep your general ledger general. So we're going to declutter account volume. Again, we're going to look for all those duplications. We're going to look for things that have been used one time. So we created an account that's been used just one time. We're going to push detail accounts to the subledger and submodule. So again, we're looking to leverage the system and not just build a massive general ledger just to run our business. We should be able to go and get detail from our submodule. Again, all those submodules are feeding our ledger. So we should be able to go back to those submodules to obtain detail from our accounts. Reconcile and report from the subledger. Again, reconciliation becomes critical, especially in CSF, but it's also critical in S3. But the way we reconcile, we should reconcile from our submodules. Again, the GL is the repository, but those transactions are coming from our submodules. So we should be able to easily reconcile from our submodules. And then we want to make sure that our data is broad enough to report on with concise use. So while we're doing this streamlining effort, we don't want to shut down or get rid of accounts that we really need. I mean, there could be statutory requirements. There could just be natural business requirements that we need to have specific accounts to report on. So we have to take that in consideration when we're actually doing the review and analysis of the general ledger. So including the stakeholders across departments. So we need to understand what our current pain points are and what we want to do for the future. We want to document decisions, who, what, when. So this is when we reach out to our friends in HR, our friends in payroll, our friends in supply chain. We want to go out and make sure that they are covered. We're not getting rid of accounts that they need or that they have to have. And we want to make sure that we're setting up our chart to facilitate the entire business and not just to help finance. Designing with the future in mind. So we have to make sure we look at our general ledger in a way that supports growth. Will we spin off a unit? Will we do acquisitions? How do things occur? Will we bring on a new wing to our hospital? How do we make sure that we have the structure designed and set up to promote our future growth? We need to ensure that our design will accommodate internal and external reporting requirements. So we almost have to look at this backwards. We have to look at what our reporting requirements are and then take that and develop what we're going to do for our chart of accounts. Using smart numbering as a compass. Know when, well, actually know where and how to apply numbering structure without being painted into a data corner. So I'm certain this sounds familiar to many of you. Again, we've all learned, and I know I was taught when I started early on, is building the system using smart numbering. But again, we have to make sure that if we use smart numbering, that we make sure we account for future growth. We cannot afford to paint ourselves in a corner by not numbering our accounts or our dimensions in the proper manner. And then number 5, structure data to justify critical business decisions. Data-driven decisions require clear, concise, consistent data. Data in equals data out, good, bad, or ugly. So we've always heard them say, garbage in, garbage out. And we want to make sure we have a singular use for accounts and dimensions. So we've been involved at ROI in several large restructuring projects. This one in specific was a large children's hospital. It was a comprehensive implementation of multi-tenant CloudSuite financials, supply management, and HCM. Stakeholders involved were accounting, operations, revenue management, IT, procurement, and payroll. And this shows that we went in with a strong plan that defined scope, objectives, and identified the committee. We diagnosed the issue, so we analyzed the chart, we evaluated reporting requirements, and we identified the specific systems that were involved. We came up with the design. How we did that is we conducted collaborative sessions. We determined the dimensions at that time, so obviously this was a CSF financials. We delivered, so we validated the design, we developed the mapping, and we updated the general ledger. And then we sustained. So we always have to develop a maintenance plan and procedures, developed an education and adoption plan. So again, we set up on how you can maintain and sustain your new chart and global ledger. But we also had to educate people, because although we had key stakeholders involved, we still had the rest of the entire organization to get prepared for this new design. So the results: simplified account volume based on business rules. We eliminated account waste, so 50% from the balance sheet and 71% from an income statement. Those are huge gains when you look at reducing your chart of accounts from the initial chart that was put in front of us Think about this again. We lost 50% of the balance sheet accounts and 71% of the income statements. So that's a huge win when you can reduce your chart by that amount. We came up with a refined numbering system to scale with the organization, and we improved data accuracy to support meaningful analytics. So again, these restructuring projects are pretty big, and they're pretty efficient, and the results are something that you can hang your hat on. They take some time, they take a lot of planning, involve a lot of people, but the end result is fantastic. So transitioning to CSF, how can I prepare? So how can I get ready? So what are some of the things that I can do to start preparing before I make the transition to CSF? So again, we've been talking a lot about the chart of accounts review. This is the time to do it. Before you start the project, this is the time to look at your chart of accounts. Structure review. Again, this is the time to look at those accounting units and make sure that you have your organization structured, again, to facilitate your reporting. And speaking of reporting, we want to review those reports. Make sure that we have current and future requirements in place. We want to get rid of those reports that aren't being used or just specifically written for one or two individuals. If they really have no meaning, we want to get those out of the way beforehand. We want to take a look at our master data, our vendor master, our item master. We want to make sure we have those items cleaned up prior to the start of the project. Asset management. We want to make sure those assets are in good shape as well. Do we need to do disposals? Do we need to do inventory? How do we make sure that our asset module is as clean as necessary? So we want to review our extensions. We want to review the interfaces. We want to make sure that all things that are coming in or out of our current system are accounted for. So any interfaces that we want to make sure that are going to be part of our project, we want to have an inventory of those. We want to know exactly what they do and how they work. Approval matrix. Approval matrix is huge. Again, we want to make sure that we understand what's being approved and how it's being routed. And currently, if you're using the IPA, we want to make sure that we know that. We want to make sure that's well documented. And developing an instance strategy. Obviously, this is important as well, because if you're going into the cloud, you actually lose the functionality that you currently have if you're on premise. On premise right now, you could just, for instance, if you want to do a backup, you can just call right down to your IT department and say, hey, can we schedule a backup? Well, if you go into the cloud-based solution, that's all done by Infor, and you just can't call Infor and have them just do something for you right away. Everything has to be scheduled. And when we look at an instance strategy, we also need to make sure that when we're doing our project plan for our project, that we include those instance strategies in our project plan. So how can ROI help you through this process? Again, we have a well-versed team on CSF. We've been through a couple of pretty large implementations. We've also continued to support CSF implementations. We have other presentations and webinars, including Book of Basics, Money Doesn't Grow on Trees. We have HCM Fundamentals, moving on up with Benefits Management, Understanding Jobs and Positions. So that, again, that takes us a little bit outside of the financial realm, but again, we have a lot of offerings with our ROI unit. So for further information, please reach out to ROI at roihs.com, or you can also reach us on our media platforms. We are on LinkedIn. We also have a strong presence on Facebook. Thank you for attending this blog. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. Thank you.